Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti and welcome to Life Edge, because life shouldn't be mediocre. I am joined today by my good friend and co-host, Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
Good, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we've got a great guest today. We've got Jaclyn Kostner. She'll be joining us in a moment. And Harold is on the video switcher and mixer, and here we go.
This show is sponsored by Relay Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks.
And we are back, and joining us in that center position of power, we've got Jaclyn Kostner, Dr. Jaclyn Kostner. She also has a PhD.
Be with you.
Yeah, I'm glad. We had a talk earlier in the week, and it's always fun to meet people we haven't met personally before, though. You've written a lot of books, and in fact, here, let's show your author page. You've got a great page of books and things you've done. So,
yes,
lots of good stuff.
They went worldwide, got translated. It was a life-changing moment when those books came out.
Sound good. I like the name of the first one, The Round Table.
I like that too, and I
story
think
about that when we get a little bit deeper into the interview here. It was a really fun experience.
Now, Jaclyn, your company name is WebinarGuru. Well, that's your website, WebinarGuru.com. And is that it right there? There we go.
Yes.
And so that's a new name that you've taken up recently. You've had a company for many years before that. And this is kind of an exciting new company name. And it's what you've done for, well, let's not talk about what you've done forever. Let's talk about something very interesting. You, at 5 years old, had a vision. You knew at 5 what you wanted to be, where most people are still trying to figure out how to eat. Tell us, what happened when you were 5?
Yeah, it was one of those wonderful experiences where you learned about entrepreneurship as soon as you learned a little bit about money. And I was a child, I loved popsicles. And my dad would send me to the store to get popsicles for my brother and my sister and my friends. And he would give me 30 cents. The popsicles were 6 cents a piece at the store I went to, so I would bring back 5 popsicles. But what I learned is that if I went just one more block further, I could buy 6 popsicles for the 30 cents. I could eat the profits. I could even share them with my friends. And then I could come home and still give my dad the necessary 5 popsicles to distribute. He'd always go, "Oh, what a great thing. Thank you for doing that. Here's a popsicle for you, and here's one for your friend." So we might have had an orange tongue or a red tongue from those popsicles. But I learned real early that it's kind of fun to make a profit. And I knew then that I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's move forward from that time to 1990, when you started doing things that most people hadn't even started yet, which is engagement online and engagement with, I think was it AT&T and Hewlett-Packard?
Yes, initially they were our first clients. And it was a very unique story because when my son went off to college, I went off to get my PhD. And as pursuing that, one of the things that I wanted to do was to position myself as a business professional that my prospective client base would want to do business with. Now, I wanted the Fortune 500s. What are you going to do when you've been a teacher for 12, 15 years, and then you strike it out in your own business? You've got to have something really special to interest them. And so I always had an interest in technology, and I always had an interest in communication. And so I got my PhD in virtual teamwork. At the time, it was so new and so cutting edge, they didn't even use the word virtual teamwork yet. It was multi-site teamwork or distance teamwork. And so we were really pioneers and came out there and were able to win the business with AT&T, Hewlett-Packard, and many, many more.
That's great.
What I love about this is I remember after I got my PhD in '96, became really fascinated with the possibilities of online learning. And so by that time, you had already been doing it, 6-7 years. But remember, at that time, there were so many ideas about how to collaborate, and a lot of the internet service providers were kind of like trying to do value add by offering different platforms for collaboration. But the problem was, you can envision something, they didn't have the bandwidth or anything to pull it off. So now what you're doing is you're probably able to do everything that you were able to think about in the beginning and actually apply those principles.
Yeah, it's pure magic. Technology is pure magic today. And yes, it was difficult at the beginning. In fact, in training those virtual teams the first couple of years, we actually traveled to do that training face-to-face and to try to impart the most information we could, telling them that you have to have good technology. But bottom line is, if you want to be successful, it's the human part that you've got to get right, and that's the tough one. And so we went out and did some great face-to-face training. I found myself traveling, and all of our trainers, we had a lot of contract trainers, we were traveling all the time. There was such a high demand initially, and actually went on for a lot of years. But I was traveling so much, I ended up showing up somewhere with 2 different colors of shoes on, a black one and a blue one. And I packed so fast and was trying to repack and get out of town to go to the next place. I did that actually twice. And so I began to just think to myself, I wonder if there's a better way to do this, because I really had no life. I mean, I was not around for my family. I was traveling all the time. I was just exhausted when I got home. And about that time is when the technology came out, a technology called NetMeeting and another technology called Placeware. They were the early players in this field. And with NetMeeting, I remember going in this one aerospace company. NetMeeting would let you share your screen, and you could do the phone part of it and all of that. And it had an interactive part to it, but the aerospace company that we were doing work with at the time had turned off the ability for people to collaborate on it. They couldn't use the chat, they couldn't use any annotations, they couldn't interact other than just kind of listening on the phone. We came in and showed them a whole new way to use this. And what surprised me was some VP came to us and said, "Is that the same technology that we're using?" And we said, "Yeah, it is. You can do all of these things." And so we began to do our training virtually.
It wasn't a meeting owned by Microsoft at one point?
Yeah, they bought them out. It's hard
They
to remember
bought it.
the track. This.
Yeah. And then I remember Placeware. I worked on that one too for a while. That was a long time ago. And they were good solutions. Placeware was actually pretty cool.
I loved it. They had, when we used to give these large group webinars, presentations to 500, 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and Placeware would support that at the time. But they used to have this little grid that was on the center of the screen, had all these little tiny little boxes in it. And so if you asked the audience to signal to press on the green hand, all the audience things would turn green. And if you asked them to touch the red, all the audience would be red. So between the speaker and the audience, you could really interact with them. And the audience could see the whole group changing their ideas as we talked about things and as we went through the material. It was anonymous, so people weren't threatened with it. I loved it. Placeware was a great tool. We did a lot of work with Placeware. And then I think that one might have been the one that Microsoft bought.
Placeware?
So I have a question about, okay, so we've suddenly in the last 3 months had more acceptance than ever with synchronous training. Whereas, asynchronous became the gold standard. Now it's synchronous. But how did it happen that Zoom it dominated? That's like featureless compared to some of the other platforms. What are your thoughts?
I agree. It doesn't have a lot of features unless you really dig in. And there are actually some pretty cool ways to interact in it, but it's so deep into the technology that most people don't know it's there. They make it kind of difficult. The technology that we have really loved to use that was really the easiest and best for training in our view was WebEx Training Center. And unfortunately, Cisco, which had initially all the market, they had like a 75% market share, they decided they didn't want to be in that business as a primary business. And so they kind of cut it back and didn't market it as much. You can still get Training Center, which is awesome. It has 48 ways for people in the webinar to interact with each other. They're easy to do. They're fun to do. People want to be interactive in that session.
Well, you know, Zoom came out of WebEx. He was one of the top engineers or director of engineering at WebEx, and he went off on his own and created Zoom. And Zoom, I think, functionally is easier than WebEx, but not, like you said, in the training arena. No, they didn't do that much in training. It was more for meetings. And it's not bad. It works. Audio isn't that good in Zoom. When you have too many people, it starts getting a little scratchy. But they're good tools. There's some new ones. We just started working with Blue Jeans, and so far so good. Yeah. It looks. We've only had it for like a week, and we've nothing formal with it, but just playing with it. It's pretty cool. They've done some nice stuff, especially in audio. They did something nobody's done. They have Dolby audio, Dolby stereo.
Wow.
No, that's pretty good, and it sounds really good. But there's so many choices today. I mean, you still have go to meeting, go to learning, go to training. I think it is. Which are good. They're probably not as well developed anymore as like they were. It is interesting that WebEx got out of the training arena, and to a certain point, go to training isn't as popular as it was either from those folks. So either there's too many in the training arena, or they're not winning in the training arena. I'm not quite sure which.
Well, yeah, and then Adobe Connect. Remember how everybody used to use
Connect
Adobe?
was nice.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to operate all their panels and stuff, but really I find it less interactive overall than WebEx ever was. WebEx really, and Skype for Business also got very high marks from us because of how easy it was for everyone to interact in the session. But I think that there are differences in the technologies, and I think where people make the mistake is they will use one technology for everything, and they're not all good for everything. And so one technology that's out there is called On24. And if you're doing marketing and you're trying to really impress people, it is a knock your socks off platform. Beautiful, but it's not very interactive. So for marketing presentation, it's beautiful. But for training, I'm going to go to WebEx. For small group meetings like what we're doing here, I'm going to use Zoom. You know, you need to have the right platform that supports the level of interaction that you want in your session.
What do you find people oscillating towards in terms of, as users, where they're a little more comfortable?
Well, I think that they've been brilliant in designing Zoom, because actually you can just get on it and it's very easy to operate it. For the basic thing, I'm going to share my screen, or I'm going to put my video on and I want my audio to go across. You know, they did a very good job putting together Zoom for that. They do have more capability that you can get with Zoom. I mean, they do have the ability to do large group webinars. But effective webinars are not just talking heads. They're really about people interacting. And you think about people being in one audience together. When the speaker's up there talking, the audience can sense each other interacting. They can sense the laughing, the moving, the different things that are going on in the audience. For most web conference platforms, you're missing that. And what I like about some of these newer platforms is that there are ways to begin to replace that and make that audience, I call it audience presence, make that more visible, because that is huge in getting people engaged.
Oh, I totally agree with you, because I just switched over from doing meeting format to webinar, and I've just noticed that the level of engagement has plummeted. Maybe there's some little chat things, but people can't see each other's faces. But on the other hand, the problem with having the meeting format is that you would end up recording people like eating dinner, wandering off, playing with their dogs.
That's
I will never forget one of my early webinars, and we were doing it worldwide, and in each site they had a camera. And I remember it was a group in Australia, and this woman at the beginning of my telecast, as it was rotating around to all these different locations around the world, she was eating a chicken leg, or a turkey leg. And so every time it came around to her video being the one that showed opposite mine, we got to see her chomping through that turkey leg. And it was so hard to concentrate and not laugh my head off when that was happening. But yeah,
that's
strange
funny.
things happen.
That's hilarious.
And I guess like Susan said, right now you've got, you're lucky you don't have the chickens running around the back before their chicken legs. I mean, you've got kids screaming, you've got dogs running around, cats. It's a little tricky. And you know, that's been causing problems with the COVID issue. A lot of people have been forced to go home, and they're moving literally in a virtual call center. They are their own call center attached to, you know, hundreds of other people. And the problem is not all are being able to keep their jobs because a lot of companies say you have to have a professional presence at home. We can't do the dogs and the screaming kids. It's bad for business. That's a tough one. That's probably caused layoffs too and other things, but not everybody at home is ready for it.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, it really doesn't take that much to create a quiet space. You know, if you've got kids that are old enough, you can talk to them, you can close the door, you can put a sign on the door. I'm in a meeting. You talk with the kids ahead of time and let them know they can't come in. If you have a caregiver at home, someone else that's there or someone that you want to hire, you know, you can take care of the kid issue. The dogs, shut the window and or put the dog in the basement or whatever you have to do. Because if the company's paying you, they deserve the right to say you've got to look professional. And if people aren't willing to make that change, then they're going to lose their job. You know, they're lucky to have a job. One of the companies we work with, almost everyone is working from home. This is an enormous corporation. And, you know, they have standards that they require for people to be able to work from home. They've been doing it for so long that when COVID came, there wasn't even a glitch in their business, because they were already used to working from home in those remote environments. Nobody knows. Even in my environment, does it look like I'm communicating from a professional office? I'm not. I'm actually in a home office, and this is an artificial background behind me. It's a virtual background. And so today, you can project, I could be wearing jeans, and you wouldn't know any different.
Right.
The important thing is that you've got to convey you're a professional.
Exactly. And I notice that a lot of people are requiring the background that has maybe the logo of the company or something. So it's uniform.
You can put whatever background you want in the screen. And I'm going to change one here so you can see. Well, let's go to the desert here. And you can see if I lived in Arizona or if I worked in an office building where I wanted to have that as my persona. You know, nobody has to look at your unmade bed. I was watching television the other day, and they actually had people on international TV that were linked in on Skype, and the one behind her was an unmade bed with pillows and mattress everywhere, you know, bedspread everywhere behind her. And I thought, didn't you think about what's behind you?
No.
A lot of people don't.
Well, you know, it's funny. A lot of times when people are in hotels, because they're traveling and they still have to get into meetings, they do the same thing. They forget, oh, there's a bed behind me. Oops. And by the time they notice it, well, they probably won't even notice it because they're not looking at themselves. They're looking usually at the camera or other participants, and people are making comments. Oh, believe me, here's some of the stuff we've seen. People working from home, and this happened last year with somebody who, for some odd reason, got up to adjust her camera. Her blouse opened up, and there wasn't much underneath it. And everybody was like,
No.
and there were comments made. No, I don't think anybody made a comment to her, but it was like, it can happen. And it's things people don't think about, but you know, be careful what you're wearing sometimes.
Nightmarish.
We had a guest on one time. This is for a different show we were doing years ago. And she called asking for like a support call. You know, can you give me a hand? I'm having trouble with Skype. So I called up. And she's near naked. It's like, oh, God.
No.
And she was on her bed in a very skimpy outfit on. I was just going, okay, this is interesting. And you know, I helped her with Skype. She goes, that was very helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. And, you know, got off and I was going, oh, that was a weird phone call. I mean, she didn't care, but it was just sort of a little unnerving to you call somebody up and they're basically in a night outfit with see-through kind of, and I was like, oh God. It happens. If people, I think, forget they're either on the phone or don't care.
Yeah. If you're in a business call, you need to look like you're in a business call.
Exactly.
Not look like you're, you know, getting up in the morning. I think that there were a lot of people when we first got into having all these meetings from home. People didn't want to turn on the cameras because they might have been in their pajamas,
Yeah.
or they might have been in their hair a mess because they just went out for a run. And so I think for small groups that are doing small group team meetings, listen, they're working all kinds of weird hours and really long hours every week. And if they make an understanding as a team, it's okay that you don't look great. That's all right. Like today, I communicated with someone we've done a lot of work with over the years. And the first time, though, that we've used the camera, she was embarrassed to turn it on. And I said, listen, let me take my business jacket off. I'm going to show you I'm in casual clothes. And it was so nice to see her face. But the point is, we want to make sure that when you are in a business call, that you look like you're in a business call, not look like you're inappropriately dressed.
Right.
Unless you're in a small meeting where your team decides that's okay. For her, I said, it's okay that you're not dressed in a suit today. It's okay. You're working from home. Mm-hmm. And so you need to make that agreement with each other.
I think I agree. And I also think that this whole issue of turning off the camera, I noticed that pre-COVID, I'm in a lot of meetings and things, and it was totally fine just to take it on my phone, and I would wander around, walk around outside while I was talking on the conference call, because it was just like, so it was good. I mean, we got everything, we knew each other, and there may be 4 or 5 people on the call, and it was fine. But somehow with COVID, it suddenly became necessary to open up the camera, and everybody just wanted to see each other. And I think it was just that lack of human contact.
Yeah,
I find myself just starving to see other faces sometimes. You know, it's pretty isolating. Although I love being at home and I love my home, it's like I want to be with other people, and I miss that, just like everybody else is right now. So turning the cameras on really works. Many teams don't like to turn on the cameras. They are turning it on more, as you had said, Susan. And I think that sometimes people felt that if I turn on the camera, then I'm giving up my privacy. Well, you're being paid as a business person to be a part of this meeting. Mm-hmm. And the way I look at it is, this is business time, and we need to see your face so that as we collaborate about this, we can see your reaction and we can build on that during our meeting.
You know, that's a really good point you just made with that. In the beginning days of having virtual meetings, online meetings, you never saw anybody. So you not only had to rely on your voice, you couldn't even rely on your eyes to see what people were doing, how they were reacting. It made it difficult to get that human touch involved, but also to really figure out what was going on the other side of the camera. People could respond to questions or do polls or whatever else, but there was that huge lack of connectivity with the person, personal connection, which now at least we're getting able to do, which is nice. People are still resistant, though. I think people feel nervous being on camera, or they feel nervous what their backgrounds are, where they are, or they're hiding something. There's that too. So I think we've come a long way from those days. What do you think people, and this is for Jaclyn, what do you think people are thinking when their cameras are on? Do you think they're a little more self-conscious, or are they more relaxed?
I think it does take getting used to. But I think for many people, it is for many of the people that we've interacted with, it was about privacy. It was about is this meeting being recorded? Is this thing that I'm saying now going to come out 2 months from now to someone in the company I don't want to hear what I just said? They feel a little bit reluctant to share. And that's really where you have an advantage in the virtual meetings from face-to-face meetings, is because there are ways that you can share your thoughts anonymously and not anonymously. For example, if I want to ask a group, what do you think the top goals are that we need to achieve this next year? That I can say, go over to the chat, just put an idea in there, let's see what's on everybody's mind. In a matter of seconds, 30 seconds, you've got everybody's ideas down there. And then we can go through and talk about them and group them together, because there will be probably some overlap and various things. And we can use that as a way to bring those ideas forward. If we don't want to, and you'll know who put the idea in, because their name will be next to whatever they offered in chat. But if you go on, like in WebEx, you've got a whiteboard there. Or Skype for Business, you've got a whiteboard there. And you can say to everybody, take your text tool. And I want you to type the one idea, something you'd like us to achieve in the next 6 months, type it on the screen right now. So everybody's typing at the same time. It's kind of cool. And then the leader of the meeting can move the things around. We can prioritize them. We can group them together. We can do various things with it and build consensus of what we're achieving together. And this really helps everybody be a part of that meeting and be a part of that interaction. There's lots of other cool things we can do too. But I'm saying that it isn't just, I think when we think about being in front of a camera, for the people that I've known, it's been a lot more about, am I being recorded? Is this going to come back and bite me?
And that was my next question to you. How do people react knowing that many times the webinars or the meetings are recorded?
Well, I think that the presenter or trainer has to be very skilled in making it very comfortable for people to interact. We pay a lot of attention to this. In our trainings, we will have the audience members participate 30 to 45 times an hour. And it sounds like it's an impossible task, but it really isn't when you know how to make all this happen. And so it's a matter of they want to be a part of it and they want to participate in that discussion. And so it's a matter of, should I use an anonymous way for them to contribute, or should I use a named source for them to contribute? In all cases, we acknowledge everybody's ideas. Everybody's ideas are considered by the group, and everybody is a part of that conversation.
That's good.
Let me say one thing, if I might.
I really like that. Yeah, and I think to me, one of the things that's important is if you can have polling and ways like that to keep people at least engaged, but almost having a project or an outcome, an objective at the beginning of it, like almost like having a productive meeting, but or considering it a learning experience instead of just a passive. I'm here and I'm going to take in things. But you want to have you define an outcome.
We learned real early on, when they built in those attention meters into, like WebEx has this attention meter, and it will tell you instantly anyone who clicks on another screen. So you go check your email, you go check the web, you go on some other app. Yeah. I can see that, okay? Yeah. And so we have really watched that because we want that all to be green. People are paying attention. What we find is after about 50 seconds, it'll start dropping off with many people. They are so programmed to multitask. Mm-hmm. So but if we can get them to multitask with each other in the training, they love it. They love the accountability. They love the participation. They love being a part of it. And they learn like crazy. And so it's really all about learning to make it safe and comfortable for people to interact and to make it very relevant interaction. It can't just be, tell me if the sun is shining where you're at today. Nobody cares about that. But if you ask them, which of the ideas do you like the best? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, type it in chat, the number that we've numbered them on a whiteboard. They'll type the numbers in, and then we can have further conversation about it and take that information and do something with it.
So how do you think people are reacting to I wouldn't call it new normal, but let's just say to being virtually online? Are they getting with it?
I think that there was a real bad start with web conference and with webinars. I know when we were in WeBank, a women business owned, we were certified, and we'd go to these huge conferences. And I would always go up to people and say, just tell me, do you ever multitask in webinars that you're in or virtual meetings? And I'd be greeted with laughter. I mean, it's like, of course I do. And because everybody was doing it, because the presenters were boring. They didn't involve the audience. They went through their boring slides, and they think that people are going to be engaged. No, engagement is very complex. It's got to be active engagement, getting them to physically participate in the session in whatever ways that you can that are relevant. But it's also doing everything about your voice, your video, your slides. Everything has to be designed for engagement.
Yeah, that's good.
I totally agree with that. And it's interesting how those are like the basic conditions for learning, keeping engagement and doing it where it connects with the person's experience and their and sometimes, like, we have a lot of people who talk about telling stories, and they say, well, it makes sense, whatever. They don't really talk about the use of stories for engagement and making that connection and engaging the affect. And it sounds like you do that a lot.
Yes, I think stories are good, short stories that are relevant. People, no talking head is going to engage people. I mean, if you get a very accomplished speaker, you can do a very good job in keeping people with you when you're in the same room with them. When you're online, I think our brains have become rewired in some ways, because we're all kind of reaching for that phone, or just kind of, oh, I wonder if that thing's on sale on the internet, or whatever. And it's just real hard for us to stay focused. We're not accountable for being a part of it. So it's the accountability, but not in a negative way, but in a positive way of saying, let's use this session to benchmark each other. I'm going to let you share what's going on in your world in a non-threatening way. Let's take a look at it. And then I want to share with you something that will help you. And then we work through the models and work through things and have questions and things related to it. But it's designed to actively engage the audience. The audience is key.
That's true.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be something like as like trivial as, like, seemingly trivial as say, if you have an obedience school or online dog training, etc. It's just like, okay, which dog do you consider, which breed do you consider the most challenging, or just something, or your personal experience, but establishing that connection and that relatability, and then focusing it back to that problem or reason that you're there. I think, it's what you're saying, and I can see that as a key.
Susan, you just put the strangest vision in my mind. Dog training virtually. That would be really weird, especially the socialization part. That's scary.
Well, that is a new one.
That's great. Well, we're almost out of time, but tell us, Jaclyn, what's next on your horizon? Because I don't get the feeling you're somebody who just sits and says, well, I'll do this for the next 20 years because I'm a little bored. What are you up to next?
I have a couple of projects that are on the fence here that we're just starting up the new WebinarGuru. This is starting from zero, like about a month and a half ago. Bridge the Distance was online for about 25 years. We worked with about all of the Fortune 100 companies. All the big corporations came to us, and we loved that. It was just wonderful, but I sold off the domain, and now my whole focus is on WebinarGuru. So I've got a new book that's going to be coming out. I'm in the process of writing it now. I'm also working on a project with a very close friend of mine who is a very accomplished speaker, and we're coming out with a new program, going to be totally online. It will not be in a webinar, but it'll be a 5-star speaker. It's going to be all about all the things you have to do to build $1 million business, as she and I both have done. She has a different business than mine, but we had met at a Christmas party a number of years ago and sat down at a table with 10 people who all wanted to be professional speakers. She and I are the only ones that are still doing it 20 years later, and she and I both made it big. And I was more in webinars, workshops. She was in face-to-face training and books.
That's great.
So we're putting our work together.
So we're looking forward to seeing you. I know you're going to be on the eLearn Chat show probably in a couple months, and you'll have a lot of stuff to talk about then, all the new stuff. So we're looking forward to seeing you then. We wish you the best of success in the new company. And this is fun. I think there's a lot of good advice in what you're talking about. And boy, technology has finally caught up to you. That's really what we've done. And now other people can learn from the things you learn from, which is great.
Yeah, the technology makes me better than I am.
Now we do
and a lot of people don't understand that, but it makes me look better, act better, be more creative, express myself better. I love technology. And so when you learn to use it well, it's magic. I work from home and love my life.
That's great. Now we do have a question we usually ask at the end of the show. and it's part of why we call it Life Edge. What's are one of the things, or one of many things, or many things in life that have given you that edge, that made you who you are, who made you successful and continue to have that passion and interest in what you do?
Again, I go back to when I'm 5 years old. I had an older brother and an older sister, and we used to go down to Florida every year to have vacation. They had a high dive. Now, if you can imagine, I'm 5 years old, so I'm very, very tiny. And my brother and sister were jumping off the high dive, and I was not to be outdone by them. But I think I went up and down that ladder about 20 times before I finally got the courage to go to the end. I can remember to this day what it felt like standing at the edge of that diving board and looking down, because it was 10 times further looking down than it was looking up. And I remember my heart beating, I'm breathing hard, but I thought, you got to take the leap. And I stepped forward and took the leap into the water. And that's what it's like creating your own business. It's like you've got to be willing to risk. You've got to be willing, because it was just joyful coming up for air at the end of that. And that is what it felt like starting my business. That's what it felt like working with these companies. It's just, you're going to survive, make them happy, have fun in the process yourself. And that's how we did what we did.
And you're saying one thing which a lot of wannabe entrepreneurs never quite get. You have to be a self-starter, because nobody's going to start for you. And you've got to motivate yourself. You've got to get out there and do it, because it's just not going to happen. I've met a lot of quote-unquote entrepreneurs who are just constantly complaining that they're not doing well, that things are bad or whatever. But you know what? It comes down to us, whether it's good or bad, and getting it going. Nobody's going to say, wow, what a great business you have. What'd you do? Nothing. I just sit around all day long. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But that's great. Well, we've enjoyed having you on the show today, and we wish you the best of, again, success with your new company, and look forward to seeing you very soon again. Thanks for coming on today.
I look forward to it too, Susan. Pleasure to meet you, as well as we've had a chance to meet Rick several times. So thank you.
And if you're watching the show, we're going to put Jaclyn's information below, so you can get a hold of her, look at her website, or even get some of the books. We'll have all of those links down below. Susan, we will see you next week. No, next week we don't have a show. I had to let you know that. They're tenting our building here. It's a 77,000.
So I thought it was great, Jaclyn, that you jumped and nobody had to push you.
Yeah.
Nobody had to push me. And it was just, you really learn what freedom is about, and courage and survival.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a good lesson. Very good lesson. Yes. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show. We will see you soon. And if you're watching the show, please subscribe. And if you have questions, you can put them down in the comments below for Jaclyn. Have a good one, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.